I'm a junior mountain bike racer. I'm on a fairly high volume training plan, about 20 hours per week. Holy cow, that's a really high volume training plan. Not fairly, to
That's
me at
fairly?
least. Yeah,
That's a lot.
really high. Yeah. And says, I have an FTP of 5.4 watts per kilogram. This is why I hate racing against juniors. They're so fast and they have such high watts per kg, right?
It's ridiculous.
So Keegan says, I can't seem to keep my nutrition in check, and we'll go weeks eating well and then somehow slip back and gain 5 pounds. Are there any simple rules or guidelines I should be following to keep consistent weight loss? I want to keep progressing in the sport and become a more dedicated climber, but I'm not sure how to keep my impulses in check. So this one, when we first read this one, we definitely felt like this was an important question to address, and we'll cover a lot of different angles on this one. Chad, do you want to start off with this one?
Yeah, happily. I'm kind of happy. I like that this dovetails off of what Amber just said, in that, he talks about keeping his impulses in check. Well, sometimes you don't have to. In fact, it's probably beneficial if you don't. So it's a good way to segue into this one. First and foremost, Keegan, my brother, you need to relax. You're very fast and you're young. You got a lot of experience ahead of you. I first kind of want to talk about the consistent weight loss quote that you said, because that implies that you're perpetually dieting. Sorry. When your aim is really shifts in dietary lifestyle, you're looking for something that's permanent and sustainable, not temporary. So if you're always chasing this temporary thing, it's just a difficult thing to accomplish and maintain. And I'll get into a little bit of why that is. So temporary weight loss is just that. Whereas the daily habits that you establish and that you can live by yield the sustained body composition you're looking for. And when it comes to weight loss to achieve your racing or competition weight, this is a temporary state. I listened to a podcast the other day, and a very experienced coach named Dominic Manelli stated that where competition starts is where health ends. And I know there's shades of that too. It's not in all cases. You can find a balance, but if you think of the wrestler who's trying to cut a ton of water weight in a short period of time, not healthy. A physique athlete who's trying to get down to a extremely low level of body fat, not healthy. Grand Tour riders who put themselves through these tremendous challenges day after day after day, not healthy. But they also don't live there. They're there for brief periods of time. So you can seek racing weight, but recognize that it is just that. It's going to be a temporary state. And then when it comes to these fluctuations that happen, do know that they're frequent and transient. They're going to happen all the time. Body composition changes, however, are not. So if you're just getting on the scale and looking at your weight, man, that could change across a single day. But if you're looking at body composition changes, these are more due to changes in actual muscle composition, or the amount of muscle on your body, fat composition, and these things are synthesized and they break down over a much slower time course. So body composition is definitely more what you're talking about here. And there are various ways to monitor that. Some of them a little more reliable than others, but don't get too hung up on the weight, the actual weight readings, so much as what's actually happening to your body. And honestly, a lot of that can be done simply by looking at yourself in the mirror. You can tell if you put on a couple pounds of fat or even a pound of fat when you're as lean as I'm guessing you are, considering how much you're riding and how fast you are. So that brings me to, what causes these drastic and rapid shifts in body weight. And this is total body water. I mean, that's most of it. Your body weight fluctuations are largely due to body water. And when it comes to endurance athletes, yes, we do sweat a lot, and that dehydration alone can explain a fair amount of that weight change, but glycogen too. And we've talked many times about how glycogen isn't just sugar in the muscle, it's also water. And there's a lot of water. So for every gram of glycogen that you pack away, either in your liver or in your muscles, there's 3 to 4 grams of water that go along with it. So if you do the math, and let's just call those 3 to 4 grams 3.5 grams for the sake of the math. Most people have about 100 grams of glycogen in their liver when it's fully stocked up. And then athletes, man, you can go anywhere from 400 to 800 to whatever. We actually cultivate an ability to pack away more glycogen. But let's say in the case of you're 100 grams in the liver, 600 grams in your muscle, that's 700 grams. That alone weighs 1.5 pounds. The water that accompanies it is about 3.5 times that much, right? So more than 5 pounds right there. So if you were to do an exhausting workout that tapped those stores and really drained you in terms of glycogen and the water that goes with it, that's a heck of a lot of weight loss just from a single workout. So when you put that back on, I mean, maybe you hop on the scale afterwards, you want to see what happened to your water weight, and you see this low weight, and then you wake up the next day having replenished those glycogen stores, having eaten a couple meals, and your weight's skyrocketed seemingly. It's just glycogen back in the muscle and all the water that goes with it. So don't sweat it. I talked a while back how I would do depletion rides in the evening, and I used races in some cases to do them. And then I would go home and have either a low or a no carbohydrate meal and wake up in the morning and I'd be a pound lighter every day. I recognize that wasn't true fat loss. That wasn't probably changes in muscle composition. That was just water weight, but it felt good. And I found it motivating. Actually bit me in the butt after time, because I think some muscle did go along with it. So it was actually a pretty unhealthy habit, which is another thing I want to caution you against. These changes in weight loss can be poorly orchestrated, such that they lead to unsuccessful or undesirable outcomes. Nate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this can happen too with people who start keto, is they lose a lot of glycogen in their muscles and they get a very significant weight loss, or people who are chronically low carb and then they eat some carbohydrates to train and they're like, I gained all this weight, when they may not be in a big calorie surplus or at all, but their muscles take on more glycogen. Someone on the forum just said they gained 9 pounds in 2 weeks by adding 50 grams of carbs to their bottle per hour on the bike. Like they went from 0 to 50, which is mathematically like not possible. But if you, I'm assuming this person was low carb before, and then you start packing away more water and more glycogen, which will probably make you in most all races faster. Maybe a 20% climb that's short or something not. But other than that, I think day in, day out, your training will be better if you have some glycogen in your muscles, or in races especially. If you have any long races, it really, really helps.
Chad,
Okay,
do you want to carry on?
Absolutely. My first bit of advice before I actually get to my heartier advice is that trust weekly averages more than daily measurements. So if you're going to measure yourself every day on the scale, even if it's body composition, take it with a grain of salt. Body composition doesn't change on that time course. So you're going to see changes over the course of a week. So if at the end of the week you compare your weekly averages, I think that's going to be more useful information, and it's definitely less stressful and potentially less misleading. And then this is also just a note to tack on, the food in your intestines can also sway your body weight measurements. I mean, sometimes you don't clear all of it out, and it may not seem like there can be a lot in there, but there can actually be quite a lot in there. I mean, literal pounds, multiple pounds. Okay, so this brings me to, excuse me, my 3 pieces of advice for you. First and foremost, is to work with a sports nutritionist, preferably a registered dietitian who's trained in sports nutrition. So, someone who takes this as a career, has done the schooling, is constantly brushing up on skills and staying abreast of current research, et cetera. And the questions that you and this nutritionist will ask is, at what body composition can I, 1, support my training, 2, keep my risk of illness and injury low, 3, optimize both sleep and recovery, to go hand in hand, 4, manage my stress, both in general and around your diet. Try to find a way that you're not constantly obsessing over or micromanaging your diet. And there's a chance that you can fly solo on this. Maybe you have a good support system. Maybe you do your reading. Maybe you have a good handle on nutrition as it stands right now. But just one example of why I would like younger riders, and really any rider who can afford it, who has access, to work with a dietitian, is supplementation, for instance. I mean, we're as endurance athletes, we're big proponents of supplementation, it seems. And the thing with supplementation is it requires proper measurement of your biomarkers, in particular blood work. Otherwise, it's a guessing game. You don't know if you're truly deficient in something, if you truly need to enhance it, if you are enhancing it, if you're overshooting it, undershooting it, et cetera, without doing blood work. And even then, blood work is just snapshots, and you have to look at trends. And working with a nutritionist is just going to be a better bet, because you guys can mark and note those trends, discuss those trends. You're keeping a better view on your diet as a whole. So it's also an opportunity to discern food allergies and intolerances, things that you might not otherwise pick up on that a nutritionist would. And it's worth noting that people are really crappy at self-assessment, especially when it comes to estimating calorie intake. We've talked before, and it's bandied about quite a bit, that New England Journal of Medicine study way back where people were struggling with weight loss. They had them estimate their caloric intake, and they were off by as much as 50%. Which is drastic. I mean, we're talking, you think you took in 2,000 calories and you actually took in 3,000, or you think you took in 1,500 and you actually took in, over 2,200 of them. It's tough to be objective. It can be. Okay, second bit of advice, nutrition periodization. And I think you probably have a handle on this. To operate at the level at which you operate, you've got to. So you understand that you have to fuel your workouts. But don't shy away from eating during the recovery periods. I see a lot of athletes that just, they reach this level of body composition. They want to stay at it. They approach a recovery week and they undernourish over the course of that recovery week. It's not a big deal if you put a pound back on over the course of a week. You'll take it off. You definitely have the motor to do it. And if your hunger is substantiated, you're not eating for comfort, you're not eating out of boredom, just make healthful choices and try not to overeat. And when it comes to overeating, high-level athletes are seriously the best in the business at recognizing their hunger and satiety signals. They have healthy metabolisms. They have high hormone sensitivity. They're really good at paying attention to when enough is truly enough, when excess becomes excess. And then finally, focus more on certain things. One of them being watts over watts per kilogram. Body composition shifts are a heck of a lot easier than elevating fitness. And honestly, they also facilitate the sort of body composition you want. You put yourself in a position, Nate's a good example of this, where he can do a ton of work, he can maintain his body composition and eat whatever the heck he wants. And on the topic of Nate and myself to some extent, even big guys can climb. You just need to have big watts. So again, watts over watts per kilogram. Don't fear a little bit of weight if it comes in the form of muscle, when maybe an extra pound could yield 15 extra watts, or maybe 15 more minutes at your climbing power output. And then to wrap this up, continue to develop that aerobic engine. Eddie Merckx said, ride lots. And there's so much to take from that. Such a pithy statement, but it's true. This is the time in your life where any infrastructure you lay down is going to serve you for years as an athlete and as a healthy person in general. And straightforward volume is an excellent way to do this. Just ride a ton.
One thing to add, so I guess kind of like an additional perspective to this. So this is like very good general guidance on how to have your priorities straight when we're talking about training and body composition and how to reach that and how to do so responsibly. And in this case, since we're talking to Keegan and Keegan is a junior athlete, there are definitely some more concerns. And I really like how you ended off there, Chad, on focusing on watts rather than watts per kilogram and focusing on developing that aerobic engine. Because the thing that you have to remember, Keegan, is a young athlete, you should weigh more every year. Like you should be gaining weight. You're growing, right? So that is not a bad thing. That's a positive thing. And that's just what your body needs. And as you make sure that you're, like Chad put those great priorities in check of making sure you're fueling your work, making sure that you can adequately recover and supporting like the right things, as long as you're doing that, it's okay. Let your weight be what your weight would be. Because I think that the key in this is, as a junior athlete in particular, this is something you really want to nail right now in terms of getting that straight, right, Amber? Like if it could put them in a lot better position.
Yeah, this is a great time. I mean, first of all, if you're listening to this and not watching, I've just been sitting here like nodding enthusiastically with everything that Chad said. So like ditto to everything that Chad said. Focus on those watts, build that engine. And especially as a junior, I mean, no matter how long you want to be in the sport, as a junior, you're really laying the foundation for sustainable success in the sport. And success being however you want to define that for you, whatever your goals and aspirations may be, now is the time to lay a great foundation for that. And a foundation is, it's like the base of a pyramid. It's broad and it should be substantial. So it's not just about focusing on one metric like watts per kg. I mean, focus on those watts, build that engine, but remember that there are a variety of facets to being an athlete that are a part of that foundation. So, in particular, physical and mental health are really important. And I think you look at athletes who have the most successful careers, one of the tricks, quote unquote, to having a successful career is not to become ill or injured at an inconvenient time. And your nutrition is a huge component of that. So getting a handle on some really good, healthy habits now will serve you not only on the bike, but in life. And to that point, on the mental side of building out a foundation as an athlete, I think it's important to remember that the foundation of discipline is really enthusiasm. It's more enthusiasm than it is willpower, because it's not just about like forcing yourself to go out on the bike when you don't want to, or forcing yourself to do something you don't want to. It's about remembering why you do want to, connecting with the reason that you do want to, cultivating a sense of enthusiasm, and then getting out on the bike. And that's not like a strength or weakness thing. That's a skill, and it's cultivating enthusiasm sustainably over time. It takes effort. You have to really nurture that enthusiasm. So remembering that keeping a sense of fun and enjoyment about what you're doing is really important, and that will support your discipline, your consistency, and your success over time. And then a corollary to that is to ground yourself in curiosity and not preconceptions. So, going back to what we were talking about earlier, no one can be 100% monk 100% of the time. Like, no one's a robot. You look at professional level athletes, and yeah, kind of from the outside looking in, it might be easy to think that they're just nailing it every day and they don't skip workouts and they don't have a hard time and they don't struggle and their willpower is 100%. Not true. Everybody who's an athlete is a human being, and we all have our fallibilities, and everybody makes mistakes, struggles, has setbacks, so just remember, try to remember that, disconnect from those preconceptions, ground yourself in a sense of curiosity about your own path. What is going to work for you as an athlete, and what works for you may not work for somebody else. It may not be the same path. It may not be the thing that works for another athlete that you're looking at. And on the physical side, again, going back to that foundational, explore and develop multiple facets of the sport and of who you are as an athlete. So become a great competitor. Hone your skills on the bike. Skills can be, especially on mountain bike, it could be as important as your FTP or watts per kg to being fast. Build out your experience, develop good race intuition, study the sport, become a student of the sport, build your knowledge. And in addition to becoming a great competitor, learn how to become a great teammate. Great teammates are as much about contributing to team cohesion as they are about being really fit and getting results. The best teammates don't just get good results, but the best teammates are those people whose presence on the team elevates and assures everybody else on the team. So learn how to be one of those teammates that's the glue of your team. These are all ways that you can develop yourself as an athlete. So I just want to echo everything that Chad said and then zoom out to the bigger picture and just remember, you got a lot of time ahead of you. So don't worry so much.
Something I want to add, just directly kind of addressing a certain few things. Keegan, as far as can't keep my nutrition in check, I'd challenge you to have like a perspective shift and to think instead just of fueling the work, like Chad said, right? And look at it in that regard. And then talking about slipping back and gaining 5 pounds, don't think of it in that regard. It's okay. Let your weight be your weight. Instead, just focus on enjoying the process of riding your bike and training. Finally, as Amber said, with curiosity, everybody wants to be a fast climber, right? Like, especially when we first start or when we're young, especially you, Keegan, because you're riding up against a bunch of juniors that are somehow like 9 watts per kilogram. Like it's insane. I don't know how it works. So because that everybody wants to be a faster climber, but don't, like Amber said, don't shoehorn yourself. Like give yourself the opportunity to explore and become whoever you may want to become. And that can change from day to day. It can change at any point throughout all of your career for racing. Nate, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So Keegan, you are in puberty. If you're a junior rider, do not worry at all about your weight. Your brain is developing well into the 20s. Like, hopefully if I ever coach juniors, it's ridiculous. Don't worry about your weight right now. Like, you're growing. I like Chad's idea, dietitian. Like, man, you should have if I coached a junior team, I would have a dietitian come and talk to the whole team, right? And talk about these sort of subjects. You can do because John's point too, you're going to gain weight every year just naturally. I like that idea of you could use, if you're really competitive, and this is very important to you, I do not stress this for everyone, but maybe the very, very pointy end of it. Use some fat calipers, get a basic like, okay, my goal is not to get above 15% body fat, which you're probably not going to hit anyways as a 16-year-old doing 20 hours a week. And then inside of there, try to eat the healthy foods, but then know, like, you have to be, to all your guys' points, you have to let, like, it's okay to eat a hamburger and like some French fries, not if you're Chad, but like once in a while, because like, you're a kid and you'll feel better.
But Chad drinks beer.
Yeah. Don't drink beer, Keegan. It depends on what
pick your poison.
Pick your poison. That's the point. Yeah.
I mean, like, just like, you will not have long-term sustained performance if you try to live like a monk, to Amber's point right now. And it's the amount of stress you're putting on your body. Don't worry about that. The other thing to say is that, to Jonathan said, all juniors have these crazy watt per kilos. And it's only because they're extremely light, not because they have a high FTP, but because they're still developing. So to be a faster rider overall is going to have a higher FTP. So when you get to be in your 20s, and if you still want to race during that time, it's going to be, your body's going to be where it is. And then you're going to need a whole bunch of watts. And the people who undernourish the whole time as a junior, like, they're going to fall off when they're 18, 19, 20, 21, and they still want to race, because they don't have a high watts, but they're going to be done growing and they're going to be bigger. So don't worry about that. And maybe get a couple less places now as a junior for long-term health, brain development, body development, success in the sport. If you're going for, there's got to be like 3 of you. But if you're going for a 16-year-old, some kind of national championship, sure, do it for a little short period of time. Try to get down to that weight. And then afterwards, know, hey, I'm not going to do this for 4 years in high school, opposed to maybe I'm going to have a 2 or 3 month period where I'm going to be lightweight, to Chad's point too. So Keegan, just don't worry about it. You're going to thank yourself when you're like, right, everyone? When you're in your 20s and 30s, you're going to be like so glad that you lived a little bit when you were younger, rather than live this monk existence, maybe change the way your body's developed. The brain development alone, that is so huge. Like, don't do it, Keegan. Off soapbox.
We're all nodding here, by the way, on YouTube. So you can see that we all agree. So hopefully that helps. And we actually, one of our riders on staff here, Megan, she's awesome. She actually was really kind of when NICA was first kind of starting out. She was going through the whole process in the NorCal League of going through that whole thing. So she's particularly passionate about this topic. So we haven't exactly decided when or what we'll do, but we do certainly intend on putting together some sort of guide for juniors and training and that sort of stuff. So stay tuned for that, and that'll be on the TrainerRoad blog. If you like this video, you should subscribe to our channel. Maybe even give this video a like with a thumbs up and a comment down below.
If you want to see race analysis videos, you can click on it right over here. And if you want to get your coaching questions answered, you can click on it right over here.
And if you want to become a faster cyclist, which you should go over to TrainerRoad.com. It'll make you faster. We promise. We guarantee it, right, Nate?
Guaranteed. Or your money back.
Yes, it's true, actually. We really will do that.
Yeah.